110 seconds. 100 seconds. 90 seconds. 80 seconds. 70 seconds. 60 seconds. 50 seconds. 40 seconds. 30 seconds. 20 seconds. 10 seconds.
My name's McCauley.
I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Once again, it is indeed time to get our talk on. It's Morning Talk with me, your host, McCauley, along with the champions of talk. This morning in studio, 1A, none other than talk champion, Jonathan Small. Good morning, Jonathan. How you doing?
Doing fine, Stan. It's a pleasure to be back here again. Look forward to it every single week.
How was your weekend?
Weekend was nice yesterday, and I guess I ran into you at the last minute. I mean, I feel a little
I don't know why you're
disappointed. Okay, but Saturday was like a boring, rainy day.
It was.
Yeah, and I'm actually glad I had to go to work because I was trying to switch my schedules and be off that evening and work yesterday, but it worked out better because it was good to get away from the house. It was really nothing you could do outside. And, at least at the airport, you're circulating, seeing some different people. And then yesterday was just like a picture perfect day. And, we were supposed to cross paths, me and you, yesterday. And I think we only crossed paths for about 1 or 2 minutes. I was coming back and you were leaving. So that's the end of that discussion.
Yeah. Yesterday they had an event over at the Camorra's Cultural Corner. And they had invited, all of the candidates were invited. Only 3 showed up. It was the Labyrinth walk and a conversation with, the people that were gathered there to come and just have a conversation and walk the Labyrinth and, hear from what people had to say. And Jonathan lives across the street. I didn't know where he lived. I just knew he lived across the street. So I was looking forward to him coming by or dropping by. And at about 7:30 when we were leaving.
I was coming back.
John was walking up the street.
Well, you see, the thing about it, Stan, is, I mean, that wasn't an event that you put together. I would have never stood you up.
I don't think of it that way, John.
Yeah.
Absolutely
But it
not.
was nothing that you was, I guess, basically you were invited.
Yeah, I was one of the invited guests. I had a great time.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. And, but I'm pretty sure you didn't get a lot of people turning out. Like some people.
No, it was quite a few people turned out. It was really nice. It was a nice afternoon.
You mean people in the community actually came in? And,
People in the community came in. A lot of your neighbors came over.
okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's a busy area, so I'm not surprised. But some of the candidates, other than three mayoral candidates, actually showed up.
Yeah. Tracy Funny, Giselle Jacobs, myself. That was it. Yeah.
Well, I don't know what to say. I mean, they weren't. I guess nobody was obligated. I mean, it was just like an optional if you wanted.
You're never obligated.
Okay.
Never obligated. I can't speak for anybody but myself. I was there.
Well, you see, I don't want to really speculate on things, and I don't want to throw different accusations if I don't have all of my facts in order. Because, like I said, I really wasn't there, so I can't say for sure. But I would say probably not a high priority. Let's just leave it at that.
People have priorities. I was there. I made it a priority to be there because a lot of times there are movers and shakers and bell cows within communities, and Hartford is a city of many, many different communities. And so, how do you interface and how do you respect those communities from a genuine point of view? And absence speaks louder than presence.
Well, you see, I think the whole thing, and I guess we have a little extra time before the Zoom guest logs in, so we can really go in depth. Usually it's the other way around, introduce the guest, talk after the Zoom guest. But regarding what people are motivated by, what people are really interested by, is never going to be the same, Stan. Some people are going to look at things differently, more prioritize things differently. You can't take everything personal.
No.
Just for whatever particular reason,
Now, when you say you can't take things personal, who are you referring to?
Well, whoever put this event together, I mean, the person that put this event together was probably expecting all of the mayoral candidates to attend.
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know. I wouldn't say that. I would say the opportunity was given.
Okay.
I don't think there was an expectation. I think that there was an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
It's like opportunity. There's a difference between expectation and opportunity.
Okay.
Like, we expect our guests to show up at 1:15.
Right, and I hope I don't get stood up, man. That's
right.
It's
not an opportunity to come. They made it, like that. That's an expectation. Now, there's an opportunity for you to stop by. Starts at 4, ends at 7.
Mm-hmm.
People come in and go. People are popping in and popping out, so they're in and out. It's a great opportunity. It's sort of like the Jerk Fest.
Right.
It'll be down at the Mortensen. Latino Fest. There are all Monday Night Jazz. There are opportunities for people to go out, shake hands, be seen, hear from constituents, and those people will take advantage of them. Others won't.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Well, I mean, if you have options and different selections, like, okay, you got 6-7 different restaurants. I don't really want to go to this particular restaurant. You try to invite me to attend this restaurant. We're going to have something taking place here. Mm-hmm. But I just don't want to go to that particular restaurant. I want to go to another restaurant.
That's cool.
And that's part of business. That's part of life.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess everybody can't always have to be that selective. Sometimes certain circumstances limit your different types of selections and choices that you can do. people in the community may be limited with no transportation, so certain things they probably can't always broaden beyond a certain radius area. So you got to take a lot of different factors into the equation. And I threw something at you a couple days ago. It's not even a big deal. Governor Ned Lamont is pitching the idea to bring a National Hockey League team to Connecticut. Most likely would be played probably in the XL Center.
I would say so.
And I heard on another radio station this morning, not only was the host doubtful in saying it's a bad investment to dump $100 million into the XL Center, but he was also painting somewhat of a negative image of certain parts of Hartford and downtown, almost like the same scenario with the Dunkin' Donuts Stadium when that stadium was being proposed. He was actually speaking for his own self at one point, saying that what he usually do if he comes to the XL Center or something downtown, he's just going to get in his car, walk very briskly and fast to the event, and he's looking to get out as soon as the event is over.
Was he scared?
Well, the other co-host on the radio show was telling him that it would be a good opportunity to help other businesses. If you get a lot of people coming into the downtown area, then that could spur people going to other different types of businesses. He's now speaking for how he feels about himself, and he thinks this is a reflection on other people. We're not, if I'm coming to the XL Center for an event, I'm not looking to stay into the city no more longer than what the event is going to consist of. So if I'm getting into the city downtown, I'm parking my car from what he was saying, getting out of his car, walking very quickly to the XL Center. Once the event is over, he's getting back as soon as he can. He also threw some negative images about, well, hey, it's a high crime area. I don't want to be.
He sounds incredibly ignorant.
He might be incredibly ignorant, but I think there's other people. I think there's a good amount of people that think like him, though.
And they are in the same boat as him, the USS Ignorance.
Well, Stan, I'm not a business analyst, so I can't say when people come to Dunkin' Donuts Stadium, if they just come into the stadium, watch the baseball game, and they leave as quickly as they attend, because I don't know what you're going to do once you leave the stadium.
Well, there's lots of things to do if you plan your day right, and if the city's marketed correctly, there's lots of things you can do. You can go to the museum. You got the Wadsworth downtown.
Right.
You've got other features. The Science Center is here, so if you got kids, you can make a whole day of it. Take the kids to the Science Museum, get a lunch, and then go over to the baseball game. Go to the Wadsworth, then go to the baseball game. There's lots of different things you can do in downtown that you can't do in Midtown Bloomfield or Midtown, Bohampton or wherever the heck they're coming from to come see the baseball game. They clearly don't have a baseball stadium.
Right. But do the numbers actually back up what you just stated? Do people actually do that when they come watch the baseball game?
I can't speak for what they do. It sounds like they're not doing that, but I'm saying they could. It's a matter of how you pitch it, how you market the opportunity. There are opportunities in Hartford that abound. Hartford is a city it actually is an international city. The ethnic diversity in the city, there's 76 different languages that are spoken in this city.
Right.
And there are places that you can get authentic food. So of all the different ethnicities that come to the stadium, they can get authentic food. They can taste other cultures. So I'm saying that there's ways that Hartford could be pitched. There's ways that Hartford could be marketed to keep people in town. Now, if you have radio personalities saying that they're scared of downtown, to say that Hartford is inherently dangerous, particularly downtown, is a public display of gross ignorance, because nothing could be further from the truth.
Well, see, sometimes again, perceptions can sometimes stare reality.
No,
you don't think so?
Perceptions can come the reality of those who misperceive, But because they perceive something to be so, by no means makes it so.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, Hartford is not a dangerous place, particularly downtown. And that's what they were saying. So if you're going to get out of your car and run to the stadium and then run back to your car,
Yeah.
particularly if you're at the XL stadium, we could run through the garage.
Yeah.
You think you could get jumped and beat down, your wallet stolen in the garage? It's ridiculous.
Well, he said technically a brisk walk. He's walking very fast. I don't think he meant he's running.
Yeah,
but
that's the grown man run. He's scared. Scared.
Right.
What are you scared of?
Well, see, his intention and probably other people's intention is they just want to come to the event because it's at the XL Center. From what it sounded like to him, and it might speak for many other people,
That's fair.
they're not interested in these other things that you're talking about.
Well, that's that. Hey, it is what it is. I know lots of people go to the Bush now. They come in, they get a dinner, they make a night of it.
Well, I think what you said is the key: marketing. How the city or even the downtown is best marketed, kind of speaks to could be one of the big problems that it's having of not getting the numbers to really back up. Okay, people are going to other different places beyond just the Dunkin' Donuts baseball stadium. I mean, that's the whole plan, was to develop downtown North.
And in fairness to the Wizards of Smart, we are coming. I don't want to use this as an example, but I mean, I don't want to use this as an excuse, but we are coming off of the pandemic.
Yes, but people weren't really, I've been monitoring downtown from the 90s, and I've seen the decline of a downtown that used to be jam-packed in the 70s and the 80s to going in the wrong direction in the 90s. And it's still, downtown on a typical Monday through Friday, it's not that busy.
We understand that, Jonathan, but the fact of the matter is, and the reality is, that where downtown goes next is still up in the air. So we can look at the decline of downtowns everywhere: East Hartford, Manchester. The only real downtown that seems to be on an upswing in our immediate circle here would be West Hartford,
Right.
if you want to call that a downtown. So West Hartford Center is a totally. Oh, hold on. That's
We don't want that.
the mayor for a minute.
Right.
Rolled up on me. Midtown or West Hartford Center is a different animal. It's not like anywhere else. There are cultural, religious, and ethnic reasons why West Hartford Center is as successful as it is. And they cannot be compared to other places because they don't have the same makeup that is the genesis of that success. Not in Hartford or East Hartford,
Right.
or New Britain. So you have to work with your strengths. There are other areas like West Hartford Center, but the areas that people are trying to revitalize and create that same kind of energy, that's just not there.
Well, again, whatever the reasons why the downtown capital city is on the decline towards a true circulated destination, I got to be honest. It's only I go downtown for certain things that I'm looking for.
Taxes, pay taxes.
Well, no, even that there's a fish truck on Church Street. They make some nice fish.
Oh yeah.
So I'll stop there.
Yeah.
Harvey and Lewis, I do business with them. The Bushnell Park, I'll walk around a few
The
times.
Fishman's downtown.
The Fishman, is that what they call it?
Well, that's what.
Okay, it makes very
You
nice.
ever see the commercials?
I think I might have seen a couple of them, but I haven't.
The circle
paid that
clap and
attention.
then fish.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's it. The Science Center, I've been there. It's pretty nice. I've been to the Connecticut Convention Center. But the Connecticut Convention Center, unless it's having something that I'm really looking for, which is very rare, I don't go there.
Most people don't go there unless they go in there for something.
Right. But why? Maybe the Connecticut Convention Center is having things. I don't know for sure.
I've been to the convention center to see several events. I don't go there just because it's there. I go there because something I want to see is there. But we're not talking about. And the convention center draws people in. Those people go on the front street. They go eat at different places. People come into town to go to Bears. People come into town to go to all of the different restaurants throughout the city. So people go to West Hartford to eat. They're not going there to watch a play. Now, people may go to the Bushnell and on their way home, going westward, stop at a restaurant in West Hartford. A party of four might drop $600-700 on food and drinks.
It's quite a bit of money.
It becomes real money after a while. You got the grill, Capitol Grill downtown by on Front Street on the corner there, across from the convention center. There are different things and attractions to bring people downtown.
Right.
It's a matter of how downtown is marketed.
Well, again, you say that's the key. The downtown is not marketed correctly, but maybe Governor Ned Lamont, let's give the person the benefit of the doubt, is trying to change that. Maybe he feels bringing a professional hockey team could be a starting point.
I think that the hockey team would be an added extra to Hartford.
Well, I've said this before, and there's no need of going backwards because what's done or what did not take place. But one of the biggest missed opportunities, again, or one of the best missed opportunities was when the New England Patriots stadium were not built. That wasn't a missed opportunity. That was being played. Well, if the stadium was designed to be built for the 2002 NFL season, and it was a delay, and there was a loophole in the contract that Robert Kraft could back out if the stadium. See, everybody say he played Hartford.
He did play Hartford,
but there was a technical obligation of having the stadium ready for the 2002 NFL season. And if the NFL stadium was not built and not ready, he had the option of backing out the deal, and that's what he did. Right,
but one would suggest that was a poison pill. It was designed. He was always going to use that.
But who was to say if the stadium would have been ready?
It wasn't going to be ready.
Right. So
there was no way in the world it was going to be ready.
Okay.
Right.
Well, it's like it was a bad planning.
Not bad planning. Played.
You still believe he played the city
big time?
Okay,
that's what he does for a living.
You know what? Tommy Ritter, former Speaker of the House, he felt the stadium, it was a legitimate plan. That they really, he's probably the only person that feels that way. Though
I don't know if he's the only person that feels that way. I think lots of people felt that way because there's a lot of hope, a lot of desire. Hopes, dreams, aspirations, wants, and desires. There's nothing wrong with them. And I mean, we've got this guy. He's coming, just like with Governor Lamont. Governor Lamont is giving people an opportunity to hope. So there's nothing wrong with projecting that hope that perhaps a professional hockey team might move back to Hartford and then call it the Whalers. And I think that would be a great spark for the city of Hartford. That doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Right. It's a long shot.
Right. So the same thing with the Patriots. The Patriots were going to come. Everybody was excited about it. Planning stadiums, all part of Adrian's Land, all of this energy. But they were played. Now, no one thought they were being played in the moment. That's not how the con works. If you don't believe or buy into it, it ain't a con.
Well, you feel Hartford was being played by Robert Kraft because he wanted to stay in New England.
Yes.
Well, Foxborough.
Yes.
Boston, I think, backed out of the deal. They never had a plan on building a state. See, people felt he wanted to get a brand new stadium, which he did. but I actually think he paid his own money for it.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, but he was not going to have to pay his own money for the stadium being built here.
But Jonathan.
You don't think paying money for something don't matter?
He spent his money. We're not talking about what he might do. This is not my opinion.
Right.
He spent his money, right? That's what you said.
And for the Foxborough, for the Gillette Stadium, yes.
So if he wound up paying his own money for Gillette Stadium, then clearly money was not an option.
Right.
I mean, we're not talking about the future. We're talking about he dipped into his wallet, took the money out like Elon. How much? $44 billion? No problem. Boom.
But see, what's the purpose? He could have did that up front, though. So what was he looking for? I guess he was looking for Hartford.
Looking for the best deal that he could get for the least amount of money. But you know what? You know what good enough is? Not good enough.
Not good.
So if you got to come out of pocket to get what you want, then you come out of pocket. He is not hurting.
Right. You're right. Well, it was a
It's
true.
not like he took his rent money.
No, it's a big investment because actually he built the Patriots mixed shopping
Robert
mall.
Kraft is a tactical, brilliant businessman. His projection of what his team could be into the future is now a past reality. He's one of the most successful sports franchises in the history of sports. I think he did real well with his dream, his vision, his capacity to get the right players, the right coach. Robert Kraft is not a novice. He knows exactly what he is doing.
Well, you could be right because I remember when Governor Rowland he mentioned this afterwards, and if you really studied it, and I actually studied the movements and the body language, Governor Rowland has stated that he never seemed like he was all in. It was just he put this, face that, okay, it's a deal we're going to work on, but he didn't show no real enthusiasm the whole time. And it seemed like former Governor Rowland, he didn't realize that, or he didn't make that statement until after the deal had fell through. When somebody really is excited about a major project, like even the other day, I was telling you about the hockey team coming here, and you didn't seem like you was that excited about.
Well, I hadn't heard about it. You were asking me if I had heard.
Right.
And what had happened was, so I didn't know.
Okay.
But, I read the story after our conversation, and if he pulls it off, he's going to make a lot of people very, very happy. But I would default and I would go with the Governor Rowland because if Rowland thinks the people getting played, there's someone that knows about people getting played.
Yes,
because he's a master player.
He's a master player.
We'll be right back.
Okay.
Hey, Hartford, Connecticut. I'm talking to you.
I'm Corrine Blake, resident of Asylum Hill, and if I were the mayor of Hartford, I'd make sure that everyone in the education system knew about the community in which they work, the city in which they work. Because once you know about it, you begin to value the city and you begin to serve in that fashion. I'm really very passionate about education. I'm an early childhood educator, and so I wouldn't be doing any playing around with programming and getting help to the people who work in these areas. It has to be focused, well-formatted, and supported. So that's like my biggest thing, because as my mother taught us many, many years ago in Jamaica, once you have education, that's one thing no man can take away from you. You may lose your money, you may lose your property, but once you are well educated, no one can take that from you. And if you have that, then we can build a viable city. Thank you.
At your city, at your stop. Take a look around.
Oh yeah. Mayor for a minute. Yeah, that's what we take the official campaign vehicle out.
Right.
And people stop and do a mayor for a minute. Pretty cool.
Well, I know that's irrelevant, the mayor for the minute, but there's so many interesting topics, man. I mean, to really discuss this morning, believe it or not. Looking at the Hartford Current, I think Speaker Matt Ritter is expected to have some impact. I didn't get a chance to really look at the whole article.
You can read the whole article. It's a good read.
Okay, so you did read it.
Oh, yeah. I read the paper every morning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the African American Alliance, I believe, and a few other people you had met with Speaker Matt Ritter, a week or so ago?
Yeah.
Do you feel kind of optimistic about the meeting? I mean, how do you feel about the meeting?
I'm hopeful.
Well, hopeful means that you expect some things to.
I'm hopeful. Anytime you're negotiating, you hopeful. You believe what you have in hand. Anything else is hope.
Okay. Well, again, I didn't get a chance to look at the article in depth. I was rushing to get here, and I can't really concentrate. But it sounds like to me, again, Speaker Ritter is expected to have some, I guess, offer some aid to some of the residents impacted by the flooding issues. And I got to look at the article again. I don't want to tell people one thing and I haven't really thoroughly read something. So, but it just sounds like to me he is expecting some changes by this summer regarding this flooding and basement issues. And I don't know about the audit of MDC. That might be something different. I don't know if that was even in the article. But, you know, I think Speaker Matt Ritter, I speak highly of him as a committed, at least a committed, honest person. You may not be in favor of all of his policies. You may have differences, but he gives 100%. He returns phone calls. He responds. If he can't do it, he has his aides who work for him, you know, try to reach back out to you. So I'm not surprised that you had the meeting, but again, you just saying right now you hopeful. You know, you got the hope.
We're in negotiations, so that's all I can all I can really say is that we're hopeful, and we'll see.
We'll see. Okay.
That's all. You know, I think if it was solely up to one human being, then things would be different, but it's not. There are a lot of moving pieces, and a lot of things have to line up. So
right,
we do our part.
Yes, that's all you can do.
That's all
you know is really do your part, right. Man. But you know, I was supposed to, today. I guess I'm supposed to speak to someone from the Urban League. You know, I don't really want to question the Urban League's issue. I've mentioned this on the air before, and I'll even tell the person to tell anybody. The Urban League falls short, unfortunately, when it gets into housing. Maybe that's not their agenda. I understand housing may not be a platform that the Urban League is designed to, you know, I guess operate under. Maybe housing is just not one of their areas. I think they have some programs for first-time home ownership. But with a housing crisis, to some degree, contributed towards inflation. And
you can't be all things to all people. I mean, what do you expect that because there is a housing crisis, they should do something?
Maybe they should switch some of their agendas. Maybe they should remove some of their agendas and put housing in instead of some other programs.
Well, that's easy. That's easy said when you're from the outside looking in, telling other people what they need to focus on. Right. I mean, you know.
But if you but I tell you, if you ask the majority of people in the community, and what are they more concerned with? Cost of rent, cost of inflation relative towards what it costs to have food, or am I in favor of job fairs? Man, the job market is kind of open. You probably have a major problem in getting residents better paying jobs. I think that's a big problem, and maybe that's where education and training and networking plays a role, but you know, they have some job fair being planned, and that's all fine and dandy. The type of jobs that people are going to be hired for and the expectations, you know, some areas of, let's say, state government, you know, is there a real networking between the Urban League and state government? You know, do they have any political clout? I don't know for sure. I'm not saying. I think maybe having I want to have conversations, and we've had the CEO from the Greater Hartford Urban League on the program, but I think housing, man, right now, you know, just looking at my old street, I had a friend who was living on Cleveland Avenue. In the past, they were paying $1,000 a month. Now I see it the same. Well, not the same house, but the same. But
was the house? Were they renting the house?
They were renting, but it was a 3-bedroom, 1-bath apartment. But it was like a multi-family house.
That's not bad.
But that was then. Now it's $1,600. So
that's okay. That's market. I would say that's pretty fair.
It might be pretty fair, but I don't know. $1,600 for a 3.
That's the going rate right now.
It probably is, yeah.
Right. So I'm saying, you know, I would say that's fair. 1,000, that's not bad.
No, 1,000 is not bad, but that was a long time ago when it was
Right.
1,000.
So inflation and prices go up. People have to make more money. Sometimes they have to upgrade their capacity to earn money.
Mhm.
That's
Well, see, you're right. People need to make more money. And I know you're a practical person. You realize that you're not trying to make the network into a business to generate more money.
no.
But if you were in business,
Mm-hmm.
you would realize that you have to have a strategy to make the net. If you were trying
Well,
to,
Jonathan, if that's what I was going to do, I would do that.
right.
Right.
But would it be that simple though? I mean,
It is that simple.
Oh, it is.
Yes, it's really that simple. It's not deep. It's a matter of execution and moving toward the mark. Most things are a lot simpler than people make it out. I find that it becomes complex and difficult when there's no real intention to move the agenda forward and make it happen. There has to be execution. Planning is great, but you have to execute what you've been planning.
Well, hold on. Let's go backwards a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You would be classified as a black-owned business,
Right.
right?
Right.
If the accesstv.org, if you are a business now, maybe you're a business now. But I'm saying if you're trying to make money, you would be classified as a black-owned business.
Right. I make money, John.
Yeah, but I'm saying as a business where you have a payroll and you hire people. Howard Hill said he had $1 million payroll. I'm saying let's put everything on the table. Black-owned businesses in the capital city is not at high numbers.
That's not the capital city's fault. That's because black businessmen do not choose to do business here in Hartford.
Okay. So that's not a deficiency that people don't have the ability to create businesses.
Everyone has the opportunity to create business. Everyone is not a business person.
Mhm.
Everyone is not an entrepreneur.
Mhm.
Some people are not good at business.
Right.
A lot of people are risk adverse.
Mhm.
If you're risk adverse, then you're not going to have this fire that's necessary to move business forward because you don't want to take any risks. Businesses are risky.
Mhm.
And so everyone doesn't want to put everything they have on the line and potentially lose it if their business fails.
It's a risk, right?
Right. So, I don't know. It would be nice if there were more black businesses. But there aren't. So, what do people want to do?
Well, what would be nice, not just to say you have a black-owned business, but the impact on what black-owned businesses can do for the community towards
Right.
upward mobility. Not hoping that you have to limit, and maybe you don't have to limit yourself to corporate America or to other businesses, but when you have a networking bond of people who are really concerned. Yes, I know people is concerned about making a profit first. I understand that part.
But there are places where black business flourish.
Right.
Hartford is not one of them because Hartford is a very, very poor city. All right. Business makes money by posting a profit. So what black business is going to come here? And let me rephrase that. So what black business do you think will make millions of dollars being in business in one of the poorest cities in America?
Well, again, this may not be a good example, but we had former Mayor Shirley Franklin. She will tell you Atlanta is a very poor city. But
Atlanta is not a very poor city. There are poor people in Atlanta. Atlanta is one of the fastest growing, most productive cities in America. You cannot compare Atlanta to Hartford.
I thought Atlanta has a high poverty rate. Are you sure about that?
It does have a high poverty rate, Jonathan, but it's not one of the poorest cities in America. You have rich portions of Atlanta trying to succeed, trying to leave Atlanta.
Right,
Buckhead. With the capacity to be its own city.
Right.
As part of Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say that Atlanta may have high poverty, but Alexa, I gotta ask the right question.
Yeah, let's get the facts.
I gotta get the right question.
Right.
What would we ask Alexa relative?
Well, let's ask the poverty rate of Atlanta.
Oh, that's Alexa. What is the poverty rate of Atlanta, Georgia?
From welfareinfo.org. The poverty rate in Atlanta is 22.4%.
Alexa, what is the poverty rate of Hartford, Connecticut?
From urbanplanet.org. Hartford's poverty rate is 31%, the second highest among large American cities.
Well, it's not a large American city, number one, but that is higher than Atlanta.
Given the right, it's higher than Atlanta, and it's tinier than Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of things that need to be taken into consideration when you start asking those kinds of questions and looking at the kinds of numbers relative to other things. Atlanta has a bench of black politicians
Mm-hmm.
that can run for office.
All right.
Atlanta had a mayor that was forward thinking, that turned people into millionaires with
The Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport.
with the airport.
Right.
Atlanta has one of the busiest airports on the planet.
The busiest.
As a result of his vision.
Mm-hmm.
Hartford has Brainerd, and those with lack of vision are trying to close it.
Right.
I mean, the whole mindset of what it takes to create the synergy and the energy to make a city move forward out of poverty is almost missing in action in Hartford.
Mm-hmm.
So you cannot compare Hartford as a job generator, incubator to Atlanta. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I said it wasn't a good example. I was only saying that I felt Atlanta has a high poverty rate, and 22% is still high. I think Hartford was 31%.
Yeah, it's almost a third. And
Right.
Hartford is the fourth poorest city. I've heard it go up to the eighth, but between the eighth and the fourth poorest city of its size in the country.
The country, yeah, per capita.
Right.
For its size.
Hartford's poverty is extremely well camouflaged, but it's a poor city.
Well, see, this is my whole point. And again, it's not to single out the urban lead or any one agency, but you want to get to some hard areas that needs to be corrected. And job fairs, I'm not going to knock a job fair.
That's not all they do.
I know that, but I'm saying, when you bring up housing, you bring up black-owned business opportunities, access to capital and credit. I don't know if the urban lead is that their top agenda. Maybe that's just not what they're designed to do.
Jonathan, I would suggest we bring the urban league people back in here and you ask them these questions.
Right.
Because when outside individuals, this is just as a matter of, because the one I usually am defending is the church. When people who are not a part of an organization start dictating what they need to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wouldn't say dictating. I would say a suggestion. There's a difference between a recommendation and a suggestion comparable to dictating.
Yeah,
something.
but you are assailing them for their lack of doing these things. You're strongly suggesting that they take these things up because you see them as important.
Well, let's be honest, man. The black church
Mm-hmm.
is not going to do what the late Dr. Cooper Osagai instructed me to do, and to go to the largest First Cathedral Church, tell them to take their money out of there. And I know that's real being bold and drastic when you're telling somebody what to do with their own money. I mean, I don't want nobody telling me.
You're right. What to do with your money?
Yeah, but now you can advise me. Now you can say, okay, John, I don't
right.
think you're putting my money.
That's one way to trigger you, to start telling you what to do with your money.
Right. Well, the late Dr. Osagai, he was telling them, you're not paying taxes. You need to be held accountable. So his whole approach was totally different than mine.
Right. I respect the late Dr. Osagai, and he's entitled to whatever opinion he wants. I'm a free speech absolutist. He can say whatever he wants, but because he says it don't mean nothing. He is not the people at the First Cathedral. He has no say in what they do, and how he decides to deal with them is unique to him.
Right.
We got a caller.
Oh.
Hold on, caller. Hold on.
But we gotta get a guest now.
Did you want to talk on the air? I thought so. Hold on. Okay. We have a caller. I'm gonna make sure they would call on the air before I just pop them on.
It's been a long time since I remember hearing a caller call in.
Okay, caller, you're on the air.
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Maya Bowen.
Yes.
Good morning.
I'm calling in. Good morning, Jonathan. Good morning, Stan.
All right.
I'm listening to this conversation, and one of the things that is really driving my phone call this morning is the fact that we have, a lot of individuals within Hartford that have knowledge of the organizations that you're speaking about, Jonathan. And so if it is that they present specific programs and individuals choose not to pursue them, then, when it comes to housing specifically as a topic, it's up to the individual to actually come up with some type of strategic plan for themselves and their family to go about getting housing, which would include, but is not limited to, getting some additional skills through upskilling, as well as finding resources that can assist with that, including but not limited to possibly additional jobs, right? Or changing careers, which might include getting additional education. So we can look at these organizations as outsiders looking in, but ultimately it's the people who need specific housing. It's their position to actually go about seeking to get what it is that they need, specifically when it comes to housing. We can't change the prices in the market. We can change how it is that we go about earning the monies to pay for those rents. Otherwise, as outsiders looking in, we're just doing talking. These organizations are doing what they can, but until the people actually go about accessing what they provide, then the organizations are limited in what they can do. So that it could be an agenda item for the next 10 years. But if the people aren't doing the work themselves in terms of securing housing specifically for themselves through earning more money, then you can't blame the organization.
Right.
That's all I had.
I thank you.
Well, can I say something?
Yeah.
Not so much about blaming the organization. See, sometimes a recommendation gets confused with pointing fingers and blaming.
Well, Jonathan, you may not see this from the perspective of those that are listening to you. You are pointing big fingers.
Yeah, well, sometimes you have to.
Well, there you go. So
Right.
you somewhat admit that you are pointing the finger at them. I would suggest that it's not our outside purview to tell them how to run or what to do. They're doing what they believe is in the best interest of those whom they serve.
Right.
And so they have a ton of programs that they do and are involved in.
Right. And I really want to continue this conversation, but this guest, I want to make sure that we can get the guests.
All right, so we'll take our short break. Thank you, Dr. Bond, for a contribution.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bond.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Have a great and victorious day, everyone.
Okay, you too. All right, my friends.
Thank you.
Stick and stay. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back. See if we can't queue up our guests. And it's Morning Talk. Don't go anywhere.
Every bad political decision is made by a politician elected to office. So if you think your vote doesn't matter, just remember this. There are people sitting with politicians in a back room making deals about your future, making policies about your children, making decisions about your neighborhood. To them, you are just a vote. You are not their cause. You are just a vote. Elections have consequences, and if you don't vote, you are actually voting to keep these people in power to work against you. Now more than ever, you need to make your vote count. It's time to clear the air and vote for a mayor that is unbought, unbossed, trusted, and accountable to you, the constituent. My name is J. McCauley, and I am an independent thinker, and I approve this message. I'm asking you for your vote on Tuesday, September the 12th, 2023, in the Democratic Party primary election for mayor of the city of Hartford. For more information, visit McCauleyformayor.com. Have the courage to vote your conscience and vote for the name you trust and know. Vote J. Stan McCauley for mayor.
Hey, Hartford, Connecticut. I'm talking to you.
Hello, good day, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Tracy Ann Johnson, and if I were mayor for the day, I would pay close attention to the importance and significance of education, wellness, mental health, advocacy, early childhood education, the significance and importance and value of love, ownership, pride in our community. If I were mayor for the day, I would definitely create partnerships between law enforcement, being that I have worked in criminal justice in a variety of capacities for over 16 years. I have experience working as a substance abuse counselor within the prison systems. I have since left that environment, and now I am extremely involved within the Hartford community as a parent leader, as a wellness advocate, as an education advocate. I know firsthand the impacts of childhood trauma, environmental traumas, urban trauma, lack of education within the community, and the significance of empowering our children to know and truly understand who they are and what they have the ability and potential to become. As I have learned as a resident of Hartford and a proud resident and alumni of Hartford Public Schools, education opens up the doors for opportunities, and the reality is that with education, all things are possible. The sky is literally the limit. If I were mayor for the day, I would also create partnerships between our clergy, our church community, and our residents. I would pay close attention to the need for those in law enforcement to do what is known as not only law enforcement, but understanding the community in which they live and or work in if they do not live here. It is also important for the community members to know their values, their worth, and the role that we play together, because there is a saying, we are better together. As a parent of a child that goes to school in Glastonbury through the Hartford region open choice program, I know firsthand the significance of preparing our children to walk in such communities and also walk within our Hartford community, and the parallel between understanding of all these worlds. So if I were mayor for the day, I would really truly do a assessment on the realities that our children are experiencing, our families are experiencing from the socioeconomic stance, from the health stance, because we have many environmental realities that are also realities within our city in which we must continue to have these necessary conversations around. So if I were mayor, I would promote the cohesiveness, the love, the unity, and the pride in our city. Thank you.
Time to make a difference. Get out and vote. You vote. Go and vote. We can change it, yeah.
All right. Mayor for a minute. Welcome back, my friends. It's Morning Talk. Your host, J. Stan McCauley, along with the champions of talk, Jonathan Smalls in the house here. And we are back with our special guest. You know, every Monday we have special guests join us from all over the world and around the country. Today, of course, is no different because it is Special Guest Monday. And joining us from the West Coast is our special guest today joining us. So, we always let Jonathan have the honor of introducing our special guest. So, Jonathan, you have the floor.
Well, good morning to people out there on Morning Talk Live with J. Stan McCauley Talk Show. We have a tremendous guest this morning in the television, film, entertainment, media industry who has a lot of insightful knowledge, particularly on a major unsolved murder of two hip-hop legends. The guest this morning on Morning Talk Live with J. Stan McCauley Talk Show is a television producer, documentary, film maker, and many other titles in the television production entertainment field. No other than Mike Dorsey. Good morning, Mike. How are you doing?
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm good.
Okay, Mike, it's our pleasure. Could you let people know a little bit about yourself and background briefly before we get into our main topic of discussion?
Sure. I'm a television producer and filmmaker. I've been in the business for about 2 decades, and currently I produce for Discovery. I'm producing a travel series for them, and I make documentaries on the side, what I call my B career. So I've made 7 or 8 feature-length documentaries, and of course one of them is Murder Rap Inside the Biggie and Tupac Murders, which is what we're going to talk about today, and then that was adapted into the scripted series Unsolved, which is on Netflix now. That stars Josh Duhamel and Bokeem Woodbine and Jimmy Simpson, and that's I co-produced that series for Universal.
Well, Mike, I believe in 1996, Tupac Shakur was killed in Las Vegas. September, I think he died, September the 13th, if I'm not...
That's right.
Correct. Okay, and I guess in March of 1997, Biggie Smalls was also killed in Los Angeles. I can't remember the exact date.
Right, almost exactly 6 months later than after Tupac was killed. Almost exactly to the day, 6 months.
Mm-hmm. Mike, do you have any evidence to know who exactly killed Tupac Shakur, first of all, since he was the first person that was killed?
Yeah, I consider the Tupac murder completely solved, other than the fact that Las Vegas won't close the case. We know pretty much unequivocally that it was Orlando Anderson, who was a Southside Crip gang member from Compton. It was the same person that Tupac punched 2 hours before he was shot in Las Vegas. The whole fight happened on tape. We have it on security camera at the MGM Grand in Vegas. Orlando Anderson's uncle has repeatedly confessed that their crew did this, and that the uncle was present for the shooting, and that his nephew was the one who pulled the trigger. And other witnesses have since backed it up. Gang members who didn't necessarily talk at the time have confirmed that, they always knew it was the Southside Crip gang from Compton specifically Orlando Anderson, that did it.
But Mike, wouldn't it be hard to arrest Orlando Anderson, saying that he has been killed?
That's correct. Orlando Anderson was killed about a year and a half later. Of the 4 people who were allegedly in the shooter's car, 3 out of 4 have since died. 2 by murder and 1 by health issues. There's only 1 who's still alive who allegedly was in the car, and that's Orlando Anderson's uncle. But Las Vegas PD could still, close the case. There's a term in law enforcement called cleared other, which is when you know what happened, but there's no way to prosecute because, in this case, because the shooter is dead, you don't just leave the case open forever. You know who did it, and you just say, as far as you're concerned, the case is closed. We're not working it anymore because prosecution isn't possible.
But you mentioned there was other people beyond Orlando Anderson that was involved in the killing. So could the other people, if they're still living, actually be charged with some form of murder?
I would think that the uncle who's going around telling everybody that they're the ones who did this and that he was present for it, I would think he might be legally exposed. But the other 2 guys who were in the car, the driver and the guy that was sitting in the back seat next to Orlando, they're both dead now also. So there's really only 1 person left, I would say, that you could potentially prosecute for this. And it's the guy who's going around telling everybody that they did this.
Well, Mike, is this kind of like a gang hit? When you're mentioning Orlando Anderson, I mean, were there any signs to say that this is like a gang type of attack against Tupac Shakur?
Yeah. It was 100% gang related. Tupac, there was a beef between the gang members who were associated with Death Row, who were the mob Pyru. They were Bloods. They were associates of Death Row Records. They were the ones who were around Tupac that night in Las Vegas. And they're the ones who had the conflict with Orlando Anderson that went back months and months. The 2 gangs, the gang around Death Row were already rivals with the Southside Crips, which is Orlando Anderson's gang, and there was specifically a guy with Orlando Anderson named Trayvon Lane who had a personal issue with Orlando Anderson. There had been a fight a few months earlier involving him and Orlando, and basically, as I understand it, the thing was the next time we see that guy, it's on. And that next time just happened to be in Las Vegas, and Tupac was there, and I think Tupac knew about this issue that was happening. He did not know what Orlando Anderson looked like. He's not from Compton. But they see Orlando Anderson at the MGM, and they kind of huddle up. And Tupac's kind of like, who is that? And they said, that's the guy. That's the guy we've been talking about. And without any other prompting, Tupac just took off and ran up to Orlando Anderson and punched him. And then the rest of the crew caught up and jumped in, piled on. But that was, Orlando or Tupac inserted himself into a gang rivalry that really, he should have stayed out of, in retrospect.
Well, but Mike, this really has nothing to do with the so-called media East Coast, West Coast, because it sounds like what you're saying was it was a West Coast Compton gang that killed Tupac. So you can't say, though, Tupac, like Biggie Smalls, was on the East Coast side. It sounds like it's a little bit confusing to slightly from people on the outside, because I thought Tupac Shakur was down with Death Row. I thought he was signed with Death Row.
Sure. Well, there was one more layer to this, and this was the rivalry, and the rivalry between East Coast and West Coast is very real. Other people had died prior to this, associated with Death Row Records prior to Tupac getting shot as a result of the rivalry. What happened is that supposedly when Tupac ran up to Orlando Anderson at the MGM right before he punched him, he said something to the effect of, you're with those guys from the East. You're with those guys from New York. And the accusation at the time was that the New Yorkers had associated themselves with the Southside Crips because the Southside Crips were rivals to Death Row. So it was like a way to have people in Death Row's territory in their city who were on the New Yorkers' side, basically. So there was an extra layer of that to this whole thing, that the Southside Crips had inserted themselves into this rivalry.
But Mike, some people pinpoint the Source Awards in 1995 when Suge Knight came on stage, and he mentioned that if you sign with Death Row, you don't have to worry about the producer being involved in all of the videos and all of the dancing. Sure. And that sounds like it was a direct attack towards P. Diddy. And
Right.
then, well, excuse me. And then when I thought was the last turning point was when Snoop Dogg came on stage and he kind of was saying, "You have no love for us. We know where we are." Something to that phrase. Then saying "F y'all" and all of that. I mean, then I heard that it was people in the audience divided in some altercations. Could you kind of elaborate how much of a role that the Source Awards played in 1995 in this whole matter?
I think that's when the souring relationship between Death Row and Bad Boy Records really became very public, kind of reached a new level. And I've talked to people who were there, and they said they thought a riot was going to break out inside. That's how crazy it was and contentious it was in that room when those two speeches happened. And then at the same time you have Tupac, who used to be good friends with Biggie, and who advised Biggie to stay with Puffy, and that Puffy was going to make him a star. But then Tupac gets shot the first time in New York in 1994, and he blames that on the New Yorkers and Biggie, and claiming that they set him up, which turned out to not be true, but that's what he thought. So you have the rivalry between Death Row and Bad Boy Records happening, and then on a personal level, you have Tupac having an issue with Death Row, and or having an issue with Bad Boy also on a personal level. You then team up Tupac with Death Row Records, two camps that have beef with New York, and it just, lights it on fire.
But Mike, who actually shot Tupac Shakur in 1994 in the hotel? If it wasn't P. Diddy or anyone from the East Coast, do you have any evidence?
Yeah, so Tupac had been hanging out with some rough people in New York that I think Biggie even warned him to stay away from, because Biggie knew who these people were. And Tupac, I don't think anyone ever went to jail for that, but Tupac disrespected someone is, I think, the most widely accepted explanation. And they basically showed up at the lobby of this recording studio and robbed him and beat him up, and he ended up getting shot in the process because I think he tried to fight back. I think that was to put him in his place, because he had gotten real disrespectful with some bad people in New York. And it just happened that Bad Boy Records, that Biggie and his crew were in that same recording studio that night, and Tupac knew that, and he then jumped to the conclusion that either they set him up or that they knew it was going to happen and didn't say anything, and that really permanently ended the relationship between him and Biggie.
So do you have any kind of strong belief or evidence that P. Diddy played some type of role involving that incident in 1994? I mean, I hate to
no,
you don't.
I don't think. I think it was a complete coincidence that they were in the building that day. It's just that Tupac thought they did, and that's at the end of the day. And I think eventually Tupac moved on from that towards the end. I think he kind of realized that they weren't involved with it, but by then the relationship was too far gone. It was,
Now, Biggie Smalls would end up another hip-hop legend being killed shortly after Tupac Shakur, as we mentioned earlier, March of 1997. Was this some type of retaliation ending up on Biggie Smalls, or some type of misidentity? I'm hearing different speculations that it could have been P. Diddy that they was actually after, not Biggie Smalls. Is that the case?
Yeah, I do believe it was retaliation, and I think Biggie was the target. There's some claim that right before the shooter, it was a drive-by shooting, just like Tupac. There is, I think, one witness thought that when the shooter pulled up, he paused for a second before he started shooting, like maybe he was confirming who it was, or maybe he was surprised that it was Biggie and not someone else. But I think Biggie was the target. At the time, there was a rumor on the streets that Biggie owed $1 million to the Southside Crips, who he was allegedly associating himself with when he came to LA, and the same people that killed Tupac. So at the time, the rumor going around the streets was that Biggie had something to do with the murder of Tupac, that it was a hit, not just retaliation for the fight that night in Vegas. And unfortunately, I don't think that was true. Biggie had nothing to do with Tupac's murder. But he got blamed for it, and he was killed in retaliation. That's my belief.
Now, who is the person that you believe actually killed Biggie Smalls?
There was a gang enforcer that was around Death Row. There's around these other gang members that were allegedly associated with Death Row Records at the time. His name was Poochie, Wardell Poochie Faust. This is the kind of thing he did, killing people, beating people up, and that I believe that he is the one who did this. An associate of Suge Knight's confessed this years ago, around the same time that the confession for Tupac's murder came out, and confirmed that she, had helped make the payments to him. So there's, it's a thinner case, I would say, just because fewer people knew about the Biggie murder and who did it, than whereas Tupac, I feel like all of Compton knew who killed Tupac within a week of it happening.
Right. Stan, this is really like a sad reality of life, and I think it's because of these hip-hop popular people why it's probably drawing some attention of an unsolved murder, 25 plus years later. Do you have any comments on this? I don't want to ask you directly how you feel. I don't know how much you've paid attention to this incidents over the past 25 years, but do you think it's a deep-rooted problem beyond just rappers? They say it's an East Coast, West Coast gang affiliation. Do you think this is really a lot to do with a lot of other factors beyond just one source?
Well, I think if you're asking me, I don't.
Okay.
It's a good anatomy of rivalries and how they spin out of control.
Okay.
Yeah, specifically to this case, you can have rivalries and beefs, and you can have people, recording diss tracks of each other and talking trash to each other from the studio. Nothing ever comes of it. But then when that happens and both camps have alleged gang associations with gang members who kill people and don't even think twice about it, those words become actionable. And that's unfortunately what happened here. You had people saying, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you back. Well, you have, if you have gang members behind you who are like, yeah, we'll do that, that makes it real. So I think sometimes that's the difference.
But let's kind of clarify. I mean, is there any evidence, again, to say that Biggie Smalls or Tupac Shakur were in a gang? Because I thought you kind of mentioned something about Biggie Smalls owed $1 million to some gang members. So why would Biggie Smalls be caught up into a gang?
So Biggie wasn't in a gang, but the thing is that I think what happened was there was a murder in Atlanta in 1995. A guy named Jake Robles was killed, and that was one of Suge's best friends, Suge Knight. And Suge Knight was with him when it happened. And it happened at a party that the New Yorkers were at, and reportedly Suge blamed New York for the murder of his friend. And that made it, that was one of the things that turned it from a war of words into, okay, now it's real war between us. And I lost my train of thought on where I was going with that, but
okay. Well, let me ask you this question: in the movie, the Notorious B.I.G. of something to that terminology, how they classified the movie. I believe towards the end of the movie, Biggie Smalls' mother, she didn't feel comfortable with him going out to Los Angeles.
Right.
Was that a tragic mistake for him to go out to Los Angeles, in your opinion?
Yes, and where I was going with that last thought was Biggie was not a part of a gang, but I believe he started associating himself with gangs in Compton because of this, because he felt like his life was in danger, and maybe that other people's lives were in danger involved with Bad Boy Records, because coming out to LA became dangerous for them even before Tupac was killed. I think that's where the association with this Compton gang, the Southside Crips, came from. It was like having extra layer of security with you when you were out in LA, because you can't run a record company or be a successful rapper and not be able to come to Los Angeles. So they had to have more than just, and you can't just have, you could have a whole team of Navy SEALs as your security, but they're not going to recognize gang members from Compton in the audience that they need to watch out for. Other gang members from Compton know those guys and can point out, hey, those 10 guys in the front row, keep an eye on them, But to answer your other question, yes, I think it was a huge mistake for Biggie to come out to LA just 6 months after Tupac was killed. I think they thought they were safe, that it was over. Tupac was dead, Suge Knight was in prison, that's done. And they came out and they made, they were flashy. They made a lot of noise out here in Los Angeles, and they were out here for weeks. Biggie famously, or infamously went on the radio here in LA and rapped Long Kiss Goodnight, which was seen as a shot at Tupac's death. That pissed a lot of people off in LA. Yeah, it was really brazen for them to be out here.
So again, this is kind of like some type of a combination of affiliation of a gang rivalry to go along with the East Coast, West Coast. Because some people were saying in the media or just people in general that the media actually was kind of trying to promote this so-called East Coast, West Coast. That it, not saying that it was not some legitimate issues between the differences, but the media didn't certainly help the matter, some people felt.
Sure. I think, of course, the media, it's a juicy story. The media is going to play it up. But I think also the record companies are going to play it up to sell records. Mm-hmm. But to your point, it doesn't mean it's not real, but, people are going to capitalize on it, and it's a big story, the rivalry. And some people, on the coast, some of these rappers didn't want to be a part of it. I could tell, even though Snoop said that at that award show in New York, he, in the long run, I think wanted to patch things up because it was it's almost like it got bad for business. And just because one person's from LA and one person's from New York doesn't mean they hate each other, just because they're supposed to. So there's a lot of associations going on, personal associations behind the scenes. So, I think the media definitely played it up, and so I think did the record companies, maybe to sell records. But it was a real rivalry. But maybe the flames were fanned because of all the attention it got.
But see, I thought when P. Diddy came on stage at the Source Awards, he tried to calm the whole matter down. He didn't, from what I understand, he didn't take any retaliation shots at Suge Knight for what Suge Knight, because everybody can tell when Suge Knight was saying the producer being all in the videos, he was talking clearly about P. Diddy, because P. Diddy clearly was involved in a lot of videos that Biggie Smalls was making. But I thought P. Diddy handled it very well, and I don't know if the media really gave P. Diddy some credit for that matter. He could have easily came back and said this or that about Suge Knight, but he took the better road, in my opinion.
Right. But then, Biggie released a track not long after Tupac was shot at the Quad Studios that a lot of people were like, Biggie said it wasn't about Tupac, but it was, it was making some references to what happened to him that people drew parallels to. And it's kind of like, even if the song wasn't about Tupac, it was inflammatory.
Right.
To have released it at the time that it was released. So, both sides got their digs in eventually, but yeah, I did hear that Puff didn't really retaliate that much that night, and maybe he was still hoping the thing would boil over. I don't know, or figuring out what his response was going to be.
Okay, so again, at one point, Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls were friends, though they weren't really enemies. At some point they were really friends, and I think something soured the whole relationship and ended up costing, to some degree, both of their lives. But they were friends. They were able to interact with each other.
Right.
But did it go beyond just the two, or let's say, was Tupac Shakur able to associate? I don't think like he was friends with P. Diddy, but what was the relationship between Tupac and P. Diddy?
Yeah, Tupac and Biggie were friends. Tupac helped Biggie, I think, get exposure early on because Tupac was a year older and he had fame earlier than Biggie did as a rapper and as an actor also. Mm-hmm. And so, Tupac would bring Biggie on stage with him, for example, and get him exposure to his audience. And there's photos of, there's a really cool photo of Tupac in a Bad Boy Records, t-shirt or jacket with Biggie, and I think Puff is in the photo too. So they, there was a time when everybody was cool, and that's when Tupac was hanging out in New York a lot and recording. And then it soured, it soured. I think there might have been some little micro issues, and then it came to a head with the shooting at the Quad Studios in New York in '94 when Tupac got shot. And that permanently damaged it.
Well,
Mike, yeah, they were all friends initially.
Right. Mike.
And I would say professionally, Suge Knight and Puff got along initially too. Back in '93, '94 when they were both kind of coming up and starting out. There was no bad blood there. It's built up over time.
Mm-hmm. Stan, let me ask you a question. Sometimes people think your talent and your fame and your popularity and even your money can sometimes remove you from social economic problems. Clearly, these were two successful hip hop artists, but yet there was something still missing, something that they could not escape. So, do you think sometimes we kind of mislead people to think that once you become famous, once you become lucrative, you can kind of remove yourself, but it's still some way has to come from. It's a very tough way of life to function.
Fame doesn't remove.
It doesn't remove.
Fame and money does not remove life from you. These are real life issues. You just have a lot of money with real life issues.
Okay.
That's all.
That's all.
Right.
Right. Okay. I just want to make sure.
I also think that these were young men. Had you given them more time, there's plenty of examples in the hip hop world of people who've come from similar backgrounds who now that they're in their 40s and 50s, they've reached middle age, they're incredibly wealthy, they're incredibly successful business people, and they're not involved with this kind of lifestyle anymore. But these, in the case of Tupac and Biggie, they were freshly famous. Tupac, I don't think would have been considered rich at this point in his life. He certainly would have been had he lived a few more years. But he had spent a lot of his money on legal issues that he had. He'd been in prison for a time, not making money or not recording new material. He needed to get through his deal with Death Row. He was just starting to come through, I think, and start to really generate that kind of money where he could remove himself. But also, the fact that he got an MOB tattoo on himself, which Mob was the gang that were associated with Death Row Records. Some people I've heard there's one rapper from Compton who said that Tupac went backwards. You don't get successful and then join a gang. The real gang members are trying to get out of that life, most of them.
Right.
So they're trying to go the other direction. But I think Tupac was loyal to whoever was around him and was loyal to him. And at that time, that was these gang members who were allegedly around Death Row. He felt like they had his back, so he wanted to, show that he was loyal back to them.
Well, I don't know if this is kind of diminishing the way their lives ended, their true talent, because some people will look at Tupac Shakur as one of the most multi-versatile, talented hip-hop artists of all time. And I think sometimes people don't even realize that. You get caught up into the issues or the incidents that took place in his life, but he was a tremendous hip-hop artist who had a tremendous message. Whether you agree with his message or not, you could debate that.
Sure.
But he definitely was free in speaking his mind. He was very articulate. He could act. So he had a lot of tremendous talent. Could you kind of just elaborate a little bit about the talent level of Tupac Shakur?
And also, just as an actor, I watched recently, Poetic Justice, which was one of his first films. And he was so talented on both the stage and, as a recording artist. And as an actor, I just feel like he had so much upside, and he's one of those talents that you wish you could have seen what else he was going to do had he lived longer. So yeah, incredibly talented person.
Now,
and he came from an activist family. His family members were associated with the Black Panthers and Black Liberation, and that he was named after a revolutionary person, Tupac Shakur, in Spain. I think he would have been a very outspoken person, or continued to be very outspoken as far as civil rights and that kind of thing as well.
Before I ask my next question, Stan, do you have anything you want to ask? Okay, you all set.
This is a wonderful. It's the next best thing would be to be watching it. It's like it's a documentary.
A documentary, right? Mike, people give Biggie Smalls credit for kind of, I don't want to say saving hip hop on the East Coast, but the New York East Coast was on a decline at that particular time, and the West Coast was really flourishing, with Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg. They were successful at the Soul Train Awards, the Source Awards, but then all of a sudden Biggie Smalls comes out almost out of nowhere, and he kind of puts or brings New York back in the whole hip-hop era. So how relevant do you think Biggie Smalls were to this whole hip-hop industry as well?
I think that's correct. I mean, everybody owned Death Row Records at this point. Everybody had, Snoop Dogg, Doggy Style. Everybody had Dre Records. I mean, I'm a white guy, and at the time I was living in rural Colorado. All my friends owned these records. That was not true of New York artists at that point. So yeah, I think there's probably some truth to that. That Biggie was one of the main forces, one of the big forces that put New York back on the map internationally when it came to rap and hip hop.
Well, even at that time, he was ahead. I don't know if he started it before Jay-Z, but he seemed like but that 93, 94 up into 97, that he was more successful and popular than even Jay-Z were at that particular time. Is that true, or do you think Jay-Z just really was also?
It's hard to say, but to me, that conversation also drives home how much was lost, because look how Jay-Z's a billionaire now.
Mm-hmm.
What would Biggie be doing now if that's where Jay-Z is at? Would Biggie be at that level now? Would Tupac be at that level now? These guys died so young.
But I mean, even on a talent level, if you listen to Biggie Smalls, and again, whether that's your style of music, maybe you may not be into that type of style of hip hop that Biggie Smalls was presenting, but you can't take away his lyrics, how he could just flow.
Absolutely.
I mean, he was just amazing how he could just rap out. I mean, he would win rap battles. He could rap so fast. He could tell a message. I mean, so he had a lot of natural gifted ability. If you just look at his,
he was a great storyteller. Juicy is my favorite of his tracks. That Rags to Riches story, I love it.
Now, even when you mentioned Juicy, that was like a remake of the other R&B song. Now, if you go by the movie, I felt like Biggie didn't really want to do that type of rap song, but I think in the movie, P. Diddy said he has to put a clean version of something that's going to draw people to listen. So,
yeah, he did, and supposedly Puffy wanted, he wanted his artists to do stuff that could be playing clubs that people could dance to, because those are the records people are going to buy.
Right.
So yeah, they wanted those big. I think even to this day, hip hop artists, they want the big club hits that are going to sell a lot of records. And I think Puffy saw that way back then, and maybe there was some pushback from Big that he thought it wasn't cool. But I think in the end, Puffy was right.
All right. Now, Mike, this retired police officer or this retired detective who had a heart attack, what was his name again, and what role did he particularly play in this whole investigation? If you know.
Sure. His name was Russell Poole. Russell Poole was a robbery homicide division detective for the LAPD. Initially, the Wilshire division in LAPD had the Biggie case because it was their territory where the murder happened. But after about a month of them working the case and not making an arrest, robbery homicide division, which is kind of the elite homicide division of LAPD, they took over the case. And Russell Poole and his partner were the lead detectives at that point who took it over. And Russell Poole worked the Biggie case, and he went off on some interesting, what I would consider maybe some wild goose chases with his theories. And ultimately, left the department over it because he felt like they wouldn't pursue his theories. And then he participated in some books and documentaries over the years. And then a few years ago, he died from a heart attack. He was, not in great health from what I've heard. And he actually died while he was meeting with sheriff's detectives for the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, not the LAPD. He had a heart attack during the meeting, where he was, going to pitch his latest theory to them and try to get them to do something.
Do you think his role would have been more, had he lived, able to, I guess, close this case? I mean, how close were they at getting this case of this unsolved murder closed with his participation?
Sure. I think Russell Poole was completely out in left field. I don't think he was anywhere near solving the case. Russell Poole, no disrespect to him as a person. I heard he was a good detective and a good person, but he believed these jailhouse informants, there was a jailhouse informant named Psycho Mike, which right off the bat is an interesting name for someone you're gonna believe, who was in jail when Biggie was killed, who didn't know, when questioned, didn't really know anything about the murder as far as where it happened. He didn't know where it happened. He didn't know what type of gun was used. He thought the shooter was on foot when it was actually a drive-by, on and on. But he named a couple of names, or he gave like 5 different names for who the shooter could be, and said that it was the Southside Crip bodyguard in Compton who did it. And one of the names he gave was the name Amir. And by coincidence, it's so convoluted. By coincidence, there was a bank robbery in LA that was very famous that happened around the same time, and a cop was arrested for it. An LAPD police officer did it. And that guy's name was David Mack. And a guy named Amir visited David Mack in prison. And this was around the same, and David Mack supposedly had connections to Death Row Records. And that's where, in Russell Poole's mind, this was too big a coincidence that he believes there's all these cops that are involved with Death Row Records. Here's one of them who just robbed a bank. A guy named Amir visited him in prison, and oh my gosh, I just had a jailhouse informant tell me that a guy named Amir did it, did the Biggie murder. That's where it that's where it came from. Was all of that.
Right. Well,
and he never backed off of that theory that it was this guy named Amir that did the murder, even though the guy he went after was a mortgage broker who went to the University of Oregon, who had no gang affiliations, had never lived in Compton. Like, nothing matched him for this case at all. But for some reason, he just never gave up. That's who did it.
Well, keep in mind, we're talking this morning about Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls, but you have heard over the past, 5 to 10 years of a lot of other unknown, somewhat upcoming, maybe known hip-hop artists in their own community that has also been gunned down and killed, and I think there's really been very little arrests. Is there somewhat of a problem still in the hip-hop industry of whether it's a perception or some type of image that this could be a very violent lifestyle, or these just happens to be circumstances maybe out of the ordinary or out of the outside of hip-hop that, let's say, has led to several other hip-hop upcoming artists or artists throughout America?
Yeah, there have been so many recently. It's become a point where I think I've heard that there's some hip-hop artists and rappers who really don't want to leave their house anymore because it's gotten dangerous for them out there, because either it's a beef or someone's going to start something with you because of who you are, because they recognize you, or because they want to rob you because they know you have money. I don't know. To me, it's probably like too complicated of a problem to go too far into. But yeah, I don't know what the solution is. But I think that you also have some people that are still associating with people they shouldn't be associating with, or because maybe that's their background. Yeah, it's kind of like seems like repeating some of the same mistakes maybe that Biggie and Tupac made.
But there's really not been much of an outcry that you've heard of this East Coast, West Coast. Has that really been squashed down now totally, or is it still some?
Yeah. I hear nothing about a rivalry between the East and West Coast. It's all little, it seems like it's more like little localized rivalries now that are causing problems. Like Nipsey Hussle getting shot in LA was a really terrible one. And that was just really over a misunderstanding, I think, that he had with a gang member that showed up and started talking to him. And I think Nipsey tried to warn the guy that the word on the street was that he had snitched, and that's how he got out so soon. And I think the guy took it the wrong way and just shot him. It was that silly of an issue. So,
well, is the gang problem?
But the rivalry, I think, is over. Yeah,
is over. Right. Is the gang problem out in Los Angeles still at the high numbers that it were when you mentioned, let's say, the Crips and the Bloods, or has it been kind of changed and limited in different?
It's certainly. I mean, I don't live in gang areas, but it definitely doesn't feel like it did in the '90s when it was it was crazy in the '90s. And different cities were kind of known for different things. If you talk to bad boy security people, they'll tell you that when they're going around on tour of the country. Certain areas are known for different things. LA, of course, has always been known for drive-by shootings. And drive-by shootings, like with these two cases, were both drive-bys. They're very hard to solve. There's very little evidence. Even if you get a license plate, you still have to prove who was in the car. Yeah, it's but no. To answer your question, it does not feel like it's anywhere near the level that it was in the '90s here, as far as violence and gangs.
But again, when you're mentioning the life, how tragic Biggie Smalls and Tupac Shakur ended, you think had they just been able to, let's say, I don't really want to have you give a direct answer because nobody can know for sure, but had someone stepped in and just gotten to these people or to these guys at the right level and saying, look, I don't think you need to be acting like this. I think you're headed down a wrong path. Or was the situation so far gone that they were hard-headed, they weren't going to listen anyway? I mean, what's your views on that whole matter?
I honestly think, because they had such a good history together before they fell out, that I think a phone call, like a real heart-to-heart phone call between them where they could, iron out any misunderstandings that they had, especially over the shooting, that Tupac had in New York when he was shot. All that stuff. I think if they'd had a heart-to-heart discussion, had a 1 or 2 hour phone call, maybe this could have been quashed and this whole thing, wouldn't have happened. I think it was still salvageable at that point.
Well, what role did Snoop Dogg play? I mean, do you think it sounded like he was very remorseful, and he's changed a lot because remember he had a murder rap hanging over his head at one point that he had to beat. But what role? You don't hear too much about Snoop Dogg involved in this whole matter. Did he have any type of sides, in your opinion?
No, well, that's the thing. I think he was one of the guys that really didn't want this, and I think he got some criticism from some other people at death row because I don't think he was really into this rivalry. He didn't like it, and was friends with some of the people in New York and didn't want this to be happening. So to the point where he was, I think, criticized by some of the people at death row for not going along with this. This heated rivalry at the time. Yeah, I think Snoop tried to stay out of it.
Well, particularly after he made the comments at the Source Award, I think that was probably the worst thing he could have said, in my opinion. I think had he not said that, maybe the altercations in the audience wouldn't have taken place. But he just that was like adding water or whatever you call it on the fire. I mean, that was just a bad commentaries that he made. But we young, you all make mistakes. I mean, you can't. But that's a tragic. I think.
And you could say he's caught up in the moment. He's there with all the other death row guys. Suge said what he said. People are shouting at him and probably doing other things in their direction. So yeah, maybe he gets caught up in the moment and throws fuel on the fire.
Right. Well, again, I mean, I really want to talk about this topic, but again, it kind of takes somewhat of the talent level and the history of these two rappers who just did not have enough time to really present their true longevity in this and maybe they were great people underneath the surface too. I think sometime on the outside and what you see, there's still something within the person that's a lot different. And I think sometimes how Tupac Shakur was presented it and Biggie Smalls, I mean, there's no secret that Biggie Smalls was hustling drugs at one point, but he had stopped and gave that lifestyle up. But do you see anything within these two that they could have just been great human beings? Forget about the whole rap skills and the whole money, that they would just had a lot to offer in life in general?
Yeah. I mean, Biggie's reputation with his friends was that he was incredibly generous. And Tupac, of course, so multi-talented. I mean, these guys should be touring together right now. They should be out there, making $100 million off of the, you could call it the East Coast, West Coast rivalry tour. I really think if these guys had just matured and gotten to live long enough, maybe to settle down a little bit. Yeah, I feel like we lost so much. Yeah, I do. I think they were both, at their heart, good people. They were just they were young and full of fire at this time. And yeah, you know how that goes.
But see, not only that, but when you say young people, I mean, we still got to remember Ice-T, I believe, was in the gang. He was able to translate his life or turn his life around. Jay-Z was almost doing the same thing at one point that Biggie Smalls was doing, hustling on the streets. So, again, I just think some people you can reach a little bit quicker. And like you say, had someone intervene and gotten to these people, it could have really changed their lives around. You just don't know for sure, but I'm just willing to give people sometimes the benefit of the doubt. But this is really just scratching it, sir. Maybe I just have to have you come back for a part 2 because there's a lot.
That'd be great.
I mean, there's a lot about you with your skill set in the television industry documentary that I would love to talk about beyond just this particular topic. But I definitely appreciate you waking up so early in the morning and being available and sharp too, on the money. If there's any last words you would like to leave the people for this particular morning, feel free to do so.
No, just thank you very much for having me on. And this case is it's very Shakespearean in its tragedy and people I don't think realize how many layers there are to this story. So thanks for having me on to talk about, at least peel back a couple layers.
Couple layers, definitely. And then people can always look at some of your documentaries. Do you do podcasts, anything beyond just television?
Yeah. Yes, I have on the side for fun. I have a podcast on kind of the dark side of Hollywood history called the Dearly Departed podcast. It's everywhere. It's on iTunes and everything. We've done like 36 episodes about to this point. And then I'm producing a Discovery series right now, but it's a new series, so it hasn't been announced yet. So hopefully in a few months I'll be able to start talking about that.
All right. Well, look forward to it, Mike. Again.
But definitely check out Unsolved about the Biggie and Tupac murders on Netflix. That is it's a scripted series, but that is very, very close to the facts. That is what happened.
All right, definitely will.
Well, thank you very much, sir. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
And continued success.
Right.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. You're welcome, Mike. Take care. Okay.
Dynamite.
All right. Yes. Again, I mean, to be understand, at the time, I really weren't a big Tupac Shakur fan. His music would go through one ear and come out the other. But as I got older, I started listening to him more and more. I can see some of his, he was always talented. He could definitely rap. He could definitely articulate. But I just really wasn't that into him at the time. But Biggie Smalls, now I was more into that type of style of hip hop, and about the same age as both of these people. But sometimes when you listen to people over and over, you can see that they had a real true gift. It may not be your cup of tea, but you still can't take away like opera. I may not be an opera singer or like opera, but if somebody's good, they're good.
If they are good, indeed, they are good. Stick and stay, my friends. We'll be right back. It's Morning Talk.
Let me just stretch.
How do you define evil? Is evil the pedophile school administrator or taxation without representation? Is it the gatekeeping community leaders who sell out the very people they were elected to fight for? Or is evil the politician that puts out lies and takes in cash? However you may classify evil, having to choose the lesser of two evils still leaves you with evil. Nowhere does this rule apply more than during an election for mayor. Choosing a candidate who is the lesser of two evils still leaves you with evil. No wonder so many people don't vote. It's time for the constituents to flip the script and vote for a mayor you can trust. My name is Jason McCauley. I am an independent thinker, and I approve this message. I'm asking you for your vote on Tuesday, September the 12th, 2023, in the Democratic Party primary election for mayor for the city of Hartford. I, like you, am an independent thinker. So let's sit down and talk about my path to victory and why my 5-point plan for Hartford will work. Stop listening to the uninformed evil interests that tell you I can't win. For more information, visit McCauleyformayor.com. Have the courage to vote your conscience. Vote for the name you trust and know. Vote McCauley for mayor.
Hi. My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
All right, welcome back. It's Morning Talk. Your host, J.C. McCauley, along with the champions of talk. We got Jonathan Small in Studio 1A. So welcome back, everybody. Welcome back.
Right. So the question is, where do we go from here with this conversation? Obviously that was an interesting conversation to talk about the hip hop of two legends in the industry. And I think today people may look at Jay-Z kind of as the top dog. I mean, LL Cool J, successful in movies and other ventures, but he's not really doing much hip-hop records. And even Jay-Z is kind of leveled off. But I think, as Mike was mentioning, that he felt that Biggie Smalls and Tupac would have been right up there at that level. But it's that old saying, you know, talent is one thing, but you gotta have that character. I mean, you know, and the thing about it is, you know, we getting focusing this morning on hip hop stars, but I think other people in general lives sometimes are just getting caught up into, not everybody, because I don't want to give that impression that I'm always speaking for everybody, but certainly too many people, you know, are getting caught up into things, and it's very sometimes difficult to escape it, you know, particularly when you want to get into violence.
Well, people have conflicts with one another, and conflict resolution or transformation is necessary to avoid an obvious outcome if things are about to escalate. These are things that are just life.
Right. But you don't really believe it's the music that makes the problem, because sometimes some people might want to criticize, well, hip hop, y'all presenting this gangster image. I mean, you can't always say.
What about Big Band?
Right.
You know, back in the Bugsy days, and old gangsters with the Tommy guns.
Tommy guns, yeah.
Listening to big band music, and Dorsey, and all this other stuff. The music doesn't create the atmosphere of violence. People who may be involved in violence like particular kinds of music.
Right.
You know.
Well, you know, some people was pinpointing in the past. I mean, you know, BET used to provide a good message consistently. And then when Bob Johnson sold BET to Viacom, the format kind of changed a lot.
It did.
And it wasn't the same BET before he sold it. Again, that was a business decision. It was his company. He has his own right to do what he wanted to do. But again, if you're strong-minded, Stan, you can look at you can listen to something and you don't have to act on it. You know, if a rapper's saying, I'm gonna go get a gun and go smoke this guy, that don't mean you have to do it.
Well, I mean, people watched, The Equalizer. It's a hard watch,
right?
But it don't mean you to go out and get a gun and think that you are, a superhero and kicking down doors and sliding on your knees and jumping up and shooting everybody. I mean, watch a John Wick movie. That doesn't mean you're now gonna go out and get a gun and start shooting everyone.
Right.
So people like to make these kinds of comparisons, but they don't play out.
Well, I mean, I don't know if all of hip-hop music is as positive as some people would like it to be. I think that's still debatable.
The John Wick movie's not positive.
Not positive, right.
James Bond is not positive.
But the good movie of the past, Roger Moore and Sean Connery.
Well, but Roger, all of James Bond as a character is a misogynist, killer.
Killer, yeah. Right.
That's what he is. So, but that doesn't, so I mean, there's very little wholesome positiveness from a James Bond movie. But it doesn't mean it isn't exciting to watch or some escape from reality.
Reality, yes.
How many people are going to be baseball legends because they go to the game? I mean, people, I think there's a lot, some things are more socially acceptable than others, and people that don't like certain things will use those as ways to denigrate or tear down.
Well, it's like what you said again, conflict resolutions or how you handle conflicts. I'll just say this. I mean, you kind of put a little of my business about I live in a certain part of the city over the air. I'm coming home from work the other night about 1 o'clock, 1:30. Some guy walking down the street saying, I like your rod, man. I like your whip. I like your Lexus. So I'm coming home 1:30. I don't want to be bothered with this guy. I don't know what he's up to, man. I mean,
he just likes your car, John.
Yeah, but he wanted a conversation. He wanted me to pull over and I had kind of, just waved my hand, and I wanted to keep going.
So you didn't want to talk to him at 1:30 in the morning?
This is a stranger. I don't know this person. It's 1:30 at nighttime. You got to be on your P's and Q's.
That is true, Jonathan. But I mean, the dude just saying something like,
but he, with the other parties, he got pissed off and said "F you" when I didn't want to be bothered with him.
Well, maybe he knows you as somebody that's in social media and television, and was said hi, and you dust him off like he's a nobody.
No, not really, because he couldn't see my face that well. It was nighttime. I've got the windows kind of half. The windows might have been all the way up. I don't have tinted windows, but and I had talked about this yesterday with McCauley, and he said, who should be bothering you at 1:30? I mean, you don't know this person. You just got to be careful. I mean, that's really what I'm.
Your windows are up. You're driving down the street. Guy says, "Hey, what's happening? Nice ride." And now you.
No, he wanted a conversation. He kind of wanted me to pull over. And if he just would have said, "Hi, nice ride," and I said, I put my hand up and said,
and you heard him with your windows up.
Well, they might have been half down. I heard the guy. The guy was loud, so my windows might have been half down, and all of that. But I'm saying you got to be careful. I don't bother people at 1:30. If it's a nice looking female, I may want to say hi to her. But this is a guy though, man. This is 1:30 at nighttime. And you want to start a conversation with me?
Maybe he thought you was attractive male.
Well, I hope not, man, because I don't go that way. So I'm gonna put that to an end right there. I ain't no homo, but I'm just saying, man, you got to sometimes be careful. That's the better way to determine. Not put nobody down or anything like that. But anything can happen, man. This ain't Beverly Hills. But again. What Mike was saying, I think is still relative to a lot of young people, that if you can get to them and make sure, now this is what a lot of different organizations work towards, I guess, Stop the Violence and other programs, because you just haven't lived long enough sometime.
That is unfortunate. Young people, middle-aged people, old people, folks have issues with one another.
Right.
And a lot of times, those issues are not resolved in a way that is beneficial to both parties, or one party is negatively impacted by the decisions, and someone uses violence to resolve the issue. And so violence as a resolution to issues is time tested and true. People want to act like this is some sort of new phenomenon. Cain killed his brother Abel.
Right.
So the story starts off with folk neutralizing people who they feel are a threat to something that is near and dear to them. And so, you have Abel, Cain, and their mom and dad, and there was a real big reward back there in that garden. And it looked like Abel might have had favor with the big guy.
Right.
And so his brother killed him.
Right. So that's kind of when it all got started.
He just killed him.
Yeah.
So people neutralize things that they consider to be threats. Now, you can have a conversation. People can be reasonable. But these are very, very emotional things. And people get in their emotions run wild. And next thing you know, someone winds up hurt.
Right.
And so resolving conflict or transforming conflict would be always a good idea. So sometimes people need to intervene. As you suggested, if someone had intervened, brought them together, they had a more reasonable conversation, back down some of the emotion a little bit, get out of people's emotions and self, then sometimes people can be a little bit more clear-headed and see things. But at any time, those conflicts can resolve in violence. You know, people go to court, resolve a conflict. They make rules. People agree to go by the rules. But someone says the wrong thing at the right time. Next thing you know, someone is hurt in the court.
In the court, yeah. Right.
Or at the end, someone walks outside and shoots somebody. These are things that it's unfortunate, but life.
Well, the thing about you is you always, when we get even to mass killings, you don't never want to put the emphasis on the gun because you always hear that. Well,
Cain didn't kill Abel with a gun.
Right. The only thing I will say though is you can do more damage with certain guns a lot faster. So if you have an AK, an AR-15 or whatever these automatic weapons, they can round off a lot of gunshots rapidly. So sometimes maybe that's what some of your legislators are saying. We're not gonna make you be misbelieved that this is gonna solve violence totally. But if somebody has a certain weapon, they go into a school, they go into some type of business, and they can round off 40 and 50 gunshots with a gun that they shouldn't even be having access to. Certainly, why would someone bring, even if the gun is legally purchased, again, maybe people just want the guns banned. Maybe they want these guns to be just removed from society. Maybe that's the whole plan at some point. That we got too many of these what they call them, AR-15
Well,
rifles.
I mean, if you're talking about gun violence and gun legislation, that's another subject.
Another subject, man. Yeah. Okay, so let's not mix apples and oranges together. We're talking about some young people in a so-called hip-hop culture, in a mindset, and getting caught up into things that they shouldn't be involved with. I mean, sometimes people got to start telling people the real hard truth. Some of these guys you're hanging with, you shouldn't be hanging with. Some of you have daughters. Some of your daughters shouldn't be with this type of guy who has a reputation of beating up on girls. See, sometimes we don't want to really air out all of our dirty laundry, Stan, because it may not come across the way we would like it to be. It may point the finger. But sometimes you got to do good to get the people the right way. Your daughter shouldn't probably be with this guy. I mean, as a father, I'm pretty sure if you hear of some young guy who got a bad reputation of beating up on girls, you don't want your daughter, or you don't want your niece, or you don't want any woman with a type of guy like this. So it's more to this problem, Stan, than just one approach.
Well, Jonathan, I mean, it depends on what problems can be approached in a multitude of ways.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that there is a problem is a problem.
Right.
So what's the resolution? You run out of time finding problems and talking about the problems,
right.
and if someone comes up with a solution, then that's not the only solution. I mean, if one views the world as a glass half empty, then that's all you're gonna see. Addressing the half empty glass. Another person says, well, it's half full.
Right.
It's same level of liquid in the glass. It's just a matter of how you approach life.
Well, I was saying about the professional hockey team, I was looking at that as a half full approach of a starting point. But again, if it's not practical, if it's not going to really happen, and then you always say...
You don't know if it's going to happen until after the opportunity passes.
Right.
And then you can look back and say, it didn't happen.
Right.
But until it fails, it could work.
Right.
Right.
But again, I thought that was something, looking at the glass half full. Maybe it could do
that
something.
That is half full, I think.
Right.
Yeah, so we'll see where that goes.
Okay.
Hopefully it works. That's all you can do. You hope for the best outcome. When it doesn't happen, then you engage.
And as mayor of Hartford, would you love to see, if you're a mayor, would you love to see the Connecticut Coyotes playing at that?
I would strongly urge them to embrace the name Hartford Whalers. I don't know who owns that name.
Well, that's a little different though. That you got to get naming rights to switch your team.
Right. Well, maybe Howard Baldwin still own the name.
I don't know that. I didn't even get a chance to ask. We didn't really.
Right. So whoever owns the name, they'd be worth the investment to get that name back, and they become the Hartford Whalers again.
You would rather see the team become the Hartford Whalers
Absolutely.
than the Connecticut Coyotes. You wouldn't want to have the same name.
Why would I invest time, energy, and effort to marketing the Connecticut Coyotes, which is a brand new product, over Hartford Whalers? Hartford Whalers has staying power. It's a legendary brand.
Right. Okay.
Make them the Hartford Whalers.
Make them the Hartford. So change the name.
Right. I mean, that's my humble suggestion. It's not my team. I have no real say. But I mean, if as the mayor, that's what I would like to see.
Well, you have to remember, you're buying a team that currently exists. exist.
I'm not buying a team.
No, but the governor Lamont is trying to bring a team.
He's trying to bring the team here. I don't know how he's going to do that. I don't think the state of Connecticut is going to own the team. So,
yeah, that's the question. Who's going to own the team?
Someone will.
Someone will have to own the team. So again, we're going to take Memorial Day. I mean, you got any plans? We're off Memorial. Okay, so let's work on June.
All right. Okay, my friends, that's it. We're done.
Thank you again, Stan, for giving me this opportunity.
Always a pleasure, Jonathan. My friends, we'll see you next time. Special thanks to our guests. You all go out there and have a fabulous rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.